What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Valley coming at you with the one, the only, the certified fantabulous Mr. Grant Hughes. We're here to talk about OKC versus Minnesota, mostly about the OKC Thunder. Are like they just feel like that team to me. Like there's like a feeling of inevitability right now. But before we dive into the Thunder, the series, maybe what the Minnesota Timberwolves can do differently, Grant, how are you doing?
Like the Oklahoma City Thunder in the third quarter, I am firing on all cylinders. How about that?
I like it. Unfortunately for me, much like the Minnesota Timberwolves against the Oklahoma City Thunder in the third quarter, I am committing turnovers on 20% of my life's possessions at the moment.
It's tough.
How are you feeling about we both came out of that Thunder Nuggets series not concerned about the Thunder, but wondering, oh, like are they a little bit more vulnerable than we thought? And now I find myself thinking, I'm curious where you're at. That series might have said more about the Nuggets than it did about the Thunder.
There was a sense that maybe the Thunder weren't going to face a better team than Denver, and that I think at this on this by the same token, like that maybe Minnesota wasn't like the Warriors were just all beat up, and like maybe that series didn't really tell you anything. You just never know, right? Like you can assume, you can draw as many conclusions as sort of possible from one series, but you just don't know how, like the objective quality of a team until the next one. Like you'll have theories, and I think it's based on these first two games. Like certainly it appears that the Thunder's problems have been like they don't seem to matter because like they aren't shooting well from three. They are still like some of them are still there, and it just doesn't matter because they're so great at the things they're great at. And Minnesota maybe hadn't been tested like quite enough. You know what I mean? Like I think that's where we are now. Maybe that swings if the Wolves make their threes or something in game three. Like that would be a start.
29.8% on wide open threes, can't buy a bucket from the corners. And so if those shots fall, maybe you're talking about different games. But I think I look at the Thunder and the quote unquote concerns that not so much us, but other people had. That might just be a feature rather than a bug. Is like this is okay. The Nuggets are a really good team. But like they don't need to make threes to win. Like they're built in the image of this defensive behemoth, and I continue to marvel at the pressure they're able to give. If you go look at like the space Anthony Edwards had to operate through the first two series of the playoffs, or certainly against the Lakers, versus what he's dealing with now, where there's basically like two bodies. It feels like always there, but the entire defensive shade is towards him, and they're not giving up anything else. The Thunder are maniacal, and they're great, and they're just, what the thing I keep getting caught up on right now too, and it's like been that way since basically last year when he was a rookie. Casey Wallace is just like the seventh man as a sophomore on what is the title favorite right now. And so my question to you is, how many MVP awards do we pencil in Nikola Topic for in Oklahoma City?
Right, yeah, if this is what Wallace can do. No, I mean, The Wolves don't like. It doesn't feel like the Wolves are playing that badly. Like Edwards in game two didn't turn the ball over, and I think he looked. He made reads and passes to the only open shooter. Like the Thunder are so good defensively and so thorough that like there might be one place to get rid of the ball when you attack with it, and he found that guy a lot, and the shots didn't fall, and he didn't turn it over. And I thought like, I don't know. I think
he got
it's possible.
To the basket too. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Right.
Like, he got to the basket in game two as well.
And I think as that's part of the reason I think we could emerge from this series. It could be a sweep, and we could say like, man, Edwards was awesome. Like he was as good as you could be against that defense. And it's just like, it's not fair to judge any player on what he does against, like Jokic had some of the worst offensive games of recent memory against the Thunder, like more turnovers than assists, a couple, like that kind of thing, like stuff that never happens. So like, I think it's a testament to Edwards that he had the game he did. And then I think we should just also be prepared to accept that like he could do that again and it won't be enough. Like he could shoot even better and not turn it over and make the right reads, and it won't matter. Like I think we maybe have reached that point with the Thunder to where their defense is just so good, and they have enough of everything else to where you just sort of can't beat them, especially if you get a decent Jalen Williams offensive game and Shea gets, 85% of a good Shea game. And then it's just like, and then Casey Wallace does what he does, or Alex Caruso chips in, or Dort makes a rainbow three, and you're like, well, okay, so that's an unwinnable game for a normal opponent,
Do you see any area aside from, but this matters too, so I don't even know how to spend so much time on it. But Naz Reid not making a single one of his 3-pointers, a lot of those have been good looks. Some of it does boil down to if the and I mean Anthony Edwards' jumper hasn't been great in this series too. But aside from just make the wide open threes that Oklahoma City so far is conceding, is there anything they could do? Because the only thing that I like maybe sort of notice is it feels like they could punish Minnesota specifically. OKC, if OKC is going to be in drop more, like you need to figure out a way to punish that, because right now I don't think Anthony Edwards has done that, but I also don't know what's the best way. Is it to bring Jaden McDaniels in as the screener, and then maybe you get to go after Shea a little bit, and that's insofar as one, the Thunder let that happen, two, that Shea's even a liability, which he's not. It's just more about energy expenditure. I just don't have a ton of suggestions, again, aside from they should really just consider hitting their wide open 3-pointers.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously the starting point, and it's like sort of everything else we talk about subsequently kind of won't matter if they don't just start making threes at like a normal, like what you'd expect. I actually kind of look at the other end of the floor for Minnesota defensively, because like I think this will just be mostly a defensive series, and it's, you know, what was 118-103 in game 2. 118 is like a fair amount. I think for the Wolves to have a real shot, you need to get that number down. And like, so you can there was a stretch in game 2 where Reed was the center and Minnesota was kind of more aggressively trapping and move and like looked, you know, nobody's as mobile and athletic as the Thunder looked defensively, but the Wolves looked close to that. And I don't have the numbers for that stretch, but it kind of felt like, oh, this is more of like an equal footing kind of scenario when the Wolves are a little smaller and a little more active defensively. Because if you're going to make the Thunder look bad, I think it just has to come when the Thunder are on offense. Because other than make your shots, like I don't know what your fix is offensively for Minnesota, but like maybe you exploit a Thunder offense that's not, relatively speaking, not a strength. So I would just look at what can Minnesota do defensively to sort of keep these things a little closer, particularly in the third quarters. And maybe that's more Reed and smaller guys. You have to balance that against the fact. I had to double check this, Dan, because I can't believe this was true. The Wolves starting 5 is a plus 16.2 per 100 for the series and was plus 14.4 in game 2 with the Wolves starters on the floor. So it's like, okay, let's downsize and mess around. It's like, no, the only lineup you have that works is your starters. So I don't know what Minnesota does. I still do tend to think, again, that your best bet might just be to hope you can slow the Thunder offense down and turn them over maybe a little bit, like that kind of thing, because I don't know how you're going to score on that defense.
I do think, and I mean, this could contribute to your defense because it puts your defense in compromising positions. Minnesota's gone through these stretches where like the turnovers have gotten absurd. Mm-hmm. And I know it's the Thunder's defense, and that's what they're designed to do, but there's been some like really bad passes in transition, like Naz Reid trying to throw across. Like Naz Reid shouldn't be throwing cross-court passes against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Sorry.
and is Rudy Gobert ever going to cleanly handle a pass again? Like in his every ball that touches his hands is like something. It's all the possession is now compromised because he's not catching it cleanly, or it's just like. I mean, that's a known thing with him, but it's like you can't afford to just not be able to pass it to somebody against the Thunder.
And especially with the way that the offense is faring. Like if you don't have guys missing wide open threes and you look at how much the Thunder will play off of Rudy Gobert right now, we're sitting here saying like, oh, it doesn't really, like some of the Naz Reid without Gobert lineups are just getting hammered in this series. It's like, well, so maybe don't go to that as much, but the alternative is, okay, you mentioned the starting 5 data, but like if you just really leaned into that, how much will that hold up? Especially when I guess you could be happy that it held up through game 2 with Julius Randle having the game he did. Right. But then he's not playing in the fourth quarter. I thought that was a really interesting decision because it's not like this team is, teaming with other creators. And that's what, but before I throw it to you, that's what this Thunder team does is I feel like it like grinds you to the point of breaking to where you're just like deviating from what got you here or what's been working the most over the past few months. And I'm not even blaming necessarily Chris Finch for that specifically. Again, a lot of this comes back to wide open shots being missed. Mm-hmm. I'm all for trying stuff, but it's just this team can. Honestly, as of right now, I still have respect for the Timberwolves. I'm not trying to say that. I just have so much more respect for the Nuggets after watching how the Wolves have gone
Right.
about this series.
I think that's the right takeaway. And I'm just like, I'm like personally annoyed by what Julius Randle is doing now, because I just had to go through the whole like I was wrong, he was great against Golden State. Like this version of Randle is just so critical to the Wolves. And now it's like now I can't go all the way back and be like I knew it. Because it's the Thunder defense, and it's just not fair to judge anybody against that. Like everyone's their worst self against, except for Edwards, I guess, against that defense. So, I don't know. I was having like some real like, how do I need to like fundamentally change how I evaluate players? Because like thinking of Randall specifically, because like maybe the right way. This is before last night. Maybe the right way is to look at like what can Julius Randle be at his best, and should I just view him through the prism of like I know he can do that, and that is like what he did against Golden State and what he's done earlier in the playoffs. So like let's positively frame it like Randle has this in him, so therefore we should just not assume but acknowledge that like yeah, he might actually help really win you a series. But then it's like, I just view the negative. I think of like, well, here's what I know he doesn't do well. And now we're back to that. So I just like, I've been spun in like 10 circles by Julius Randle in the last 2 weeks. And I don't like it.
That sounds like par for the course, though. So
It kind of is.
if it was another team other than the Thunder, like you said, maybe it would be time to readjust your already adjusted priors. But I think I'm so interested to see what they do in Game 3, maybe how he factors into that, because I don't know what the card is to pull. As I sit here and say, what if the Timberwolves make more of their wide open threes? The Thunder could also do that. Like
Sure.
that's not the realm of possibility for them to shoot better. And they've had like. I don't. It just feels like Shea's been by and large just excellent in this, and it feels like we haven't necessarily even seen the peak of the Thunder offense. Really, like we probably saw it at points for a game too, and that's got to be terrifying if you're kind of looking at the rest of the league. And it's just looking at New York and Indiana. I'm not trying to put this series over, but I just look at the Thunder right now, and both of you and I have kind of flirted with this take in the past. I don't know who that's left that you're supposed to pick to beat them 4 times in 7 tries, which lends itself merit to what you said about it. And a lot of people said it too. It feels like the NBA finals might have taken place in the Western Conference semis. And I don't want to just write this. It's 2-0. It's not like it's 3-0, but
Right.
the Thunder, you almost have to wonder that you said it too after that, where it was just, that was the stress test for Oklahoma City against Denver. And now it's, well, they're not going to, the Minnesota Timberwolves are hanging around. And it's felt like the same script for a lot of these games where it's, they're hanging around, but then things start to go off the rails a little bit leading into halftime. And then they completely go off the rails following halftime.
Yeah, and I don't know what that is. It's like, because there's an element of that with the Pacers too. It just happens later in the game where it's like, it just somehow the tidal wave like starts rolling, and it's just like, well, that's it. The momentum is irreversible now, and there's just nothing to be done. I definitely have a distinct memory from Game 2 of it was the third quarter, and I think the Thunder had started the push, and it was like the Wolves were down like 8. I think it was 8. And in successive possessions, Naz Reid and I think it was McDaniels got wide open corner threes, and because the Wolves did generate like a handful of those. And I, as the shot goes, do you ever have this feeling of like you're talking to the TV and you're like, oh, that's gotta go. Oh my God, the Wolves, it's a perfectly generated wide open corner three at a time when you could cut it from 8 to 5. And that number feels better, because if you don't, it's going to be 10 or whatever. And Reed missed it. And the next time down, McDaniels had the same shot. He missed it, same corner. And it's just like, those are like, there are must makes and there are like must makes, and the Wolves made 0 of the like emphasis must makes, and they had chances. We've both said it several times already, but like there is a world where the Wolves definitely win game 1 if they make threes, and there's also a world in game 2 where like this does not get out of hand because Minnesota just makes 1 or 2 of their must make threes that they just didn't. And so the problem is like, well, it'll normalize over. It's like, well, you got to win 4 out of 5 games now. So you don't really have time to rely on the process that's generating good shots if you can't make them. And that makes analysis hard because like the Wolves could just continue to have the right process and just not get results from it. So yeah, I don't know. It feels. Would you? I mean, we both had the Thunder in this series, and we both gave the Wolves like a fair amount of credit and had it going pretty long. But like, I mean, this if you had to reevaluate it, it does just feel like we should have maybe thought about this being a shorter series. It just we believed the Thunder were a little worse than they were, and we believed the Wolves were a little better than they are.
I even said when we were making our picks that I want to kind of go with Thunder in 5.
Yeah.
But coming out of the Nuggets series, then also we have indicators, statistical indicators that show the Timberwolves are just so good against top 10 teams relative to the rest of the league. And so I just thought this would be a close series. And look, it still technically could be. But to your previous point about those must-makes, the Thunder have officially reached the stage of their existence where it's if they have like a 5 or a 6-point lead, I might have just like, oh, the game's over.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to outscore this team by? When's the last time that you felt that way about a team at this level where it's okay? Yeah, if it's the Hornets going up against the Celtics, sure,
Yeah.
I get it. But two teams at a high level, one of them's up by 5 or 6, and I'm just like, well, what's the point of me even watching anymore? Like, there's no way the Timberwolves are going to win this.
I can't believe it took me this long to get to this thought that I had. I forgot it until just now. Watching the Thunder just like put the stranglehold on in the third quarter of game 2, and which is similar script to game 1. And right around that like 5 to 6 point deficit, as they're like, you can just feel that it's shit. It's 9. Oh my, and it's just growing. And like the last time I felt that way about a team was it would have been I guess it happened several years in a row, but like the 73 win Warriors, and then the first couple of KD years where it was just like, I mean, all the KD years were that way, but like, not to say the Thunder were like fucking around with the game or anything, because they were playing really hard, but it like the game reaches a point where the team A, which is the Thunder or the early dynasty Warriors, just like have a level they can get to that you just can't. It's like it's not a question of will they hit it. It's like, when do they choose to hit this level? And the game ends because you can't get to that level. And it's just like, it's an abundance of talent. It's like overwhelming physicality and athleticism and speed. And just like, there's just like something that happens when a team is that good, where it's what you're talking about, like fairly small deficits feel insurmountable. And then they just expand the deficit to where it's like, we can quit now, right? Because there's no chance here. It's like I don't know what, there's no quantifiable thing. It's just like, you can just tell when a team has like a special gear, and it does feel like the Thunder have that.
There was I can't remember which like primer pod I was listening to for this series, and they kind of used that trope of styles make fights. And my initial thought was, after watching game 2, it was really after game 1, was the Thunder make styles. Like they force you to play a certain way, and if they want to play a different way, it's like, oh, Kenrich Williams will play this series. That'll happen. So their depth and versatility is outrageous. It's incredible. And just to put some extra context on how poorly the Wolves are shooting, they're at 46. They have a 46.3 effective field goal rate on wide open jumpers. So a defender 6 or more feet away. And just in case anyone's not familiar, effective field goal percentage measures 2 and 3 point efficiency. The Orlando Magic, Grant, who you know is one of the worst shooting teams in recent history, we're at 52.7 effective field goal percentage on wide open jumpers during the regular season. So there's room for the Timberwolves to come up, but I know as a lot of, the mathematicians like to point out, is we're dealing with small samples. So we don't get to just inherently say what bore out over these super large samples that you're going to have enough time to progress to that mean. There's hope for sure. Like, could the Wolves play better on offense? 1,000%, or hit more of their shots, 1,000%. But I come away looking at this and saying their margin for error was so slim to begin with, and now where do you kind of go? And the Thunder have boxed them into that situation. And by the way, like, if the Wolves start hitting their wide open threes, the guys that the Thunder are conceding them to, the Thunder will just adjust, because already a wide open 3 against the Thunder is kind of like, it has to be an anxiety-ridden experience, because you're watching these bodies like fly at you. Like, their ability to shoot those gaps is insane.
I had that exact same thought as you were talking of, like, again, not quantifiable, I don't think, but like because as the Wolves, like if you get a good look, I think there's an added element of pressure because like first of all, this is the only one we're getting on this possession, guaranteed. Like I can't pass this up, and two, like these are so few and far between. Like so like the must makes that I was talking about, it's like they feel more pressurized because you really must make it, and like because the Thunder just are not going to give you other opportunities, and it feels like such a squad. And if you miss one of those, like how deflating is that? Because you might, like when Reed misses that open corner three in the third quarter I was talking about, like I'm sure in the moment you're not thinking this, but I'm thinking like, man, they might not get another one of those. Like that you're just like, that was the only easy opportunity you're going to have. Now they had one on the next possession, it turned out, but there's something about the way the Thunder defend that make like somehow they play defense on shots they're not actually defending because of just the way that they play and the way that it adds like extra stakes to every shot the opponent gets and just makes it harder. I don't know. It's a wild thing to watch.
Is there also anything to just this idea where, so when you look at the primary defenders on Shea, who again, he hasn't been his most efficient self. He's gotten to the line. We don't need to litigate the free throw stuff. I mean, just the Wolves are actually getting fouled on a higher percentage of their drives than the Thunder, but the Thunder also just have them beat when it comes to getting points in the paint. I think that's going to inherently result in more fouls. And also the free throw disparity is basically non-existent for this series.
Yeah.
But so Jaden McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker and even Anthony Edwards, if you loop his data in there, the Wolves are allowing the Thunder to score as a team under 1 point per possession when any of those guys are defending Shea. To then still be down 2-0 really sucks.
Mm-hmm. What do you do? Like that's a good process. Like if you get the right guys on him, that's if things go well. I just don't, so what's the move? You just have to like can't concede switches ever. You can't let Shea get the guy he wants. Like do you just not play, I don't know, DiVincenzo or something? Like what's the move? Like how
to be honest, I don't know if you could play DiVincenzo if he's not going to be hitting his threes. And that's just like a feeling I've had a couple times, like during the regular season when he was going through that lull for him. That might be something you have to look at because it's not like Julius Randle where I think they could maybe do like, I thought the Wolves did a better job of getting Anthony Edwards deeper into the paint in game 2. And like we even saw some post touches for him. Julius Randle, just the idea of him, like that's important. Like putting pressure on the Thunder defense in that way, even if he's not necessarily making shots. And I know that was an ugly game from Julius Randle. Donte DiVincenzo doesn't kind of like, it's almost Mike Conley territory, except like DiVincenzo doesn't even have Mike Conley's, I would say, IQ or feel. Yeah. So that makes it tougher. I just don't have it. I mean, I do think what maybe I don't even know if we're underestimating because we talked about it a million times, but the Thunder are scoring 1.75 points per possession after a Timberwolves miss. Mm-hmm. And so this might just come down to make more jumpers and these games will be closer towards the end. And that will at least give you like that. If you're the Wolves, I think that's how you look at this, right? Where it's if we had fewer misses, maybe some of those like really bad, like the Thunder are going to force turnovers. And like we've seen teams commit way more turnovers against the Thunder than we've seen from the Wolves here. So yeah, you're losing that battle. But I think if you can make more of jumpers that in theory you should be hitting, you at least can say we'll be in a position to win game 3. And of course you could cling to, all right, now we get to go home.
Right. Yeah. Well, you have to. And like I think there's a decent chance that the Wolves do just if there's another third quarter, like just this game is over stretch from the Thunder, then in game 3, then I think we're set. Like we don't really, it's just a question of like, when is this going to be a sweep or is it going to be 5? But don't you think there's a good chance that Minnesota does just like capitalize on the looks that Edwards creates, and it's just game 3 is a little, certainly the Wolves will not be able to come out with anything less than like 150% like desperation and intensity like that. I don't know, I think that matters. Like I would expect game 3 to be close. It's just, I don't know. I just don't know how you can be like, I'll be curious. I don't know what the line is. Like Minnesota can't be favored in a game. I don't think, I mean, that would be crazy. I mean, they will be playing home. So let's check this line and see. Yeah, no, they're only 2.5 point underdogs. Okay.
As of right now. But this is normally the game. And maybe we've kind of moved on from that though. But wouldn't this normally be the game in theory where it's, you favor just the home team. But if they're not favored, it like that's kind of a reflection of what the public views of the gap between Minnesota and OKC right now. And if you think that Oklahoma City is head and shoulders better than Minnesota, I don't really think that's an insult to Minnesota so much as it's where people, and I mentioned this, you've mentioned it, were we just overthinking the Thunder when it came to kind of just debating like title chance. And yes, the Nuggets proved that that the Thunder could be fallible, but they found a way to win anyway. And they even in that series, there was a few games, definitely long stretches where it felt like Game 7, a perfect example. Like they felt like they decided to just flip that switch and run away with it. And again, I didn't feel like that with the Celtics of last year, even if they were kind of inevitable looking at the landscape. Didn't feel like that with the 2023 Nuggets. It's what you said. I haven't felt this way about a team since the Kevin Durant era Warriors.
Yeah.
And that's insane to just reuse a word that I've used like 8 times.
I mean, they won 68 games, right? Like that. That's up there. That's pretty high. That's more than at least one of those KD teams. So. Yeah, I agree. I think maybe the ultimate takeaway is like Jokic is that incredible because like we talked about how the Nuggets were like, 60% of their starting five was hurt. Like it's just like, and they still made a series of that, like really made a series of it. That to me is like really the bigger takeaway.
Do you have anything else on the Thunder, the Timberwolves? I'm rooting for a close Game 3, but I think what I've learned more than anything about, insofar as we had anything really to learn, I just have all the respect in the world for what the Thunder built. And I don't know, they feel inevitable right now. Maybe that changes. This could be prisoner of the moment type stuff, but I don't think it's going to be that way.
Yeah, I'm with you. The only reason I'm not jumping like both feet into the Thunder are inevitable is because like the playoff lesson every year is don't overreact to one game, but we're overreacting.
This is two. So it's fine.
Yeah, you got twice as much information.
You ready to take us out of here then?
Yep. Thanks everybody for listening, for watching. I will say, I hope you're all enjoying the OKC Minnesota series. It's still a lot of fun, if only because you get to see a team play at a level you don't see very often. Remember to rate,
far
review,
less
subscribe.
Stressful than Knicks Pacers.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, personal allegiances aside, is a little, although fairly. We'll get to that at some point. Rate, review, subscribe. Join our Discord, links for that in YouTube podcast description. Leave us a note here. Leave us a thumbs up. Leave us a comment on what you think our overreactions are, your overreactions to our overreactions, all that good stuff. That's gonna do it. Shouts Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jarrett Allen.